mini skirt on, dip my body in glitter. Platform sneakers, all the boys want a picture. Two foreign cars, I make rich look richer. Save your breath, baby, I'm not going home with ya. Mini skirt on, dip my body.
Hello. You are now tuned in to the Little Bit a Lot podcast. I'm your host, Kristen. And this week, we're back with another banger. And I'm joined by my dad, Lo.
What's happening? What's happening?
Hey, Dad.
Hey, baby girl.
I don't know if you guys have seen that meme with that cute little kid who says
She's
that.
so adorable.
Oh my
She
God.
just repeats, "Hey, baby girl" to her mom, and I think that is so adorable. Just reminds me of you, because you're adorable.
Thanks. I'm so happy to have you this week. I know
Thank
everybody's
you.
probably wondering, like, why her dad? But that's because, like, my dad is my A1 since day one. Okay, in life,
Come on.
period. But when it comes to Twilight,
Right.
my dad's been there since swimwear. Okay, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, I've been a rider since the jump off, though.
yeah. Like, let's just get straight into it. Okay. So, the real gag is whenever I think about Breaking Dawn Part 2, which is the movie that we're going to be talking about this week, guys, I think about my dad. Because my dad is so heavily associated with this movie. Because if you've listened to the last couple of episodes, then you already know that Breaking Dawn Part 1 was the very first Twilight movie that I saw, period. So I went back, watched all the films, and then by the time Breaking Dawn Part 2 debuted in theaters, your girl was ready. She knew what was going on at that
Yes,
point.
you were. Yes,
Yeah,
you
so I'm just
were.
like, ooh, this is great that I came into the fandom at the right time because we still had one more movie to go. Breaking Dawn Part 2 wasn't out yet, but when I came into the fandom. So by the time that it debuted, we were rocking and rolling.
Yes, we
You were
were.
excited, I was pumped, and we went to go see Breaking Dawn Part 2 as a family, as a fam bam. It was you, it was me, it was my sister Janae, even my mom, which is a
Yes.
gag because my mom
Yes.
can't stay awake for any movie to save her life.
Anyone.
And she did fall asleep during this movie. We
Oh, you
love
gotta
her
put her
down
out like
though.
that, huh? You gotta put your mom out like that. Okay, I got you.
Yeah. And at the time, Janae was younger, so she didn't even really know what was going on with the Twilight Saga too. So really, I don't know why they went with us. But at the end of the day, it was a family outing, and me and you were the ones that knew what was going on, and we were
Yes.
excited. So that's all that mattered.
Okay, but before you go any further, there's a certain part in the movie. I won't spoil it, but there's a certain part in the movie where something happens, and I'm sitting next to you, and you do this death grip on my leg because of that thing happened, and I thought your nails were gonna take my skin off or something like that. But anyway, because it was a plot twist, and it was a very pivotal part of the movie,
We are
and
definitely going to get into that. We're gonna have to address that for the nation soon. So we will definitely get into that because that is also the part that me and you both think about the most when it comes to this film.
right,
We have
right.
experienced Twilight together from the beginning. And I just want to say to the people out there, like, my dad, he is such a supportive father in the fact that, like, once I became obsessed with Twilight, like, first of all, you wanted me to get into it. I remember when we used to go to Barnes and Noble and Borders, you would point out the Twilight books and be like, "You don't want to read these?" And I'm like, "No."
I remember that
Yeah.
because yeah, and plus I think part of the challenge was they were so thick. They were
Yeah.
yeah,
I
they were
was I
so thick.
wasn't at that level yet. I wasn't ready yet, but you did encourage me and you're like, "Well, this seems cool. Maybe you want to, read this," because you and mom were like actively always involved when it came to my reading. Um like especially mom too, like she would try to find books as we were browsing and help me
Yeah,
out
yes, you did.
and say like, "Oh, well, this seems like maybe something you like." I'll never forget The Wedding Planner's Daughter. She picked that book up and was like, "Maybe you might like this," because she thought that the cover was cute. And
Right.
I was like, "Oh yeah." And then I ended up becoming like obsessed with the series. So that's always a pivotal moment too, because it's
I
like,
remember that.
Yeah, whenever
And
you and
you
mom.
read and reread The Wedding Planner's Daughter.
Yes. And then I ended up getting like in the beginning of that series. And then I think she did like what, two more books after that or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys got me like the entire series. I remember I
Mm-hmm.
used to read The Amazing Days of Abby Hayes. And I think you were the first one to like find that book. And then after that, like mom would make sure that she would like find all of the new ones. Every time a new
Right.
book in that series would come out, like you guys were on it. So my parents have always been involved with like supporting my reading and also like helping me find books that they think I might like.
Fun
So
fact, the author of The Amazing, you were in contact with the author, weren't you? Or was that Judy Bloom?
yes, I think it was the author of Amazing Days of Abby Hayes. I had my era where I was like emailing all of my favorite authors, and you guys were encouraging me to do that as well because at the time I was an aspiring writer. And I'd be like, hey guys, I
Right.
love your books. Listen
Right.
to what, I mean, read what my little short story. And the writers would like reply and be like, hey, Kristen, love you down. That was a cute short story. Keep writing. We believe in you.
Right. They were so very, very, very supportive and responding to you, and they weren't annoyed by you, and it was just such a it was such just such a pivotal moment in your life. And low key, you're still an author. Don't give up on that. You're still an author,
I know that you're the only
still a
person in my
writer.
life that continues to push me to like do writing. But I think that my creative juices are fulfilled with the podcast in the way that writing used to be.
Hmm.
But I
Right.
do know that like you still encourage me to do my
Oh,
writing thing.
because
But
you're dope.
yeah, like you, thank you. You tried to encourage me to read Twilight at one point. I didn't want to. And then I remember you were watching the first movie in your apartment one time and I didn't really know what was going on, so I didn't care about that then. But then finally when I saw Breaking Dawn Part 1, got into it. Then we all went to go see Breaking Dawn Part 2 in theaters. And then after that, it kind of just like snowballed. So my memories of that time was like we would come over your house for the weekend and then you'd be like set up, our movie night, and you would like, put the blankets out, we'd have the pillows, you would get us snacks, you would make us nugs, which is like my dad's version of like popcorn chicken essentially. He would make homemade popcorn chicken. I'm talking dip it in the milk. What was it? The egg
The batter,
wash.
yeah. Egg
The
wash batter, yeah.
man,
Yeah.
we used to tear those nugs up and we would have a good dinner, and then my dad would start Twilight and me and him on the weekends would have Twilight watch parties. And like that is
Yes.
such a pivotal moment of my childhood too, because that time in life was just a dark time for me in high school. And Twilight was my escape, and you knew that. And you helped that become like a safe space for me even more because we were like, well, it seems like she likes this. And I think the Twilight movies are cool too. So we would watch all of them together. And then when I was reading the books, we would have moments where I would be like, okay, wait, pause. The book is different. And then in the movie, she did this, but in the book, she did this. And you would just be like eating it up.
Yeah, I remember that. That was amazing. That was dope. But low key, I wanted to watch movies because I was a big fan of the movies because I wasn't team Edward, even though he's one of my favorite characters. I wasn't team Jacob, even though he's one of my favorite characters. But my favorite character, I am team. I started this on my own in my mind. I'm team Rosalie.
Oh, yeah, I think you're like a big influence on that for me too, because early on you've been Rosalie down since day one, and
Right.
it made me like appreciate her even more, and that's why I'm like living for Rosalie as well. Yeah, so that's who Dad was watching the movies for, but I was there for Edwini. But it was a moment. So it's like, it's such a fond childhood memory of mine, like being a teenager and just going over and watching the movies. Like, I just can't count how many times, like, me and you have watched these movies together. I'd fall asleep. We wake up the next night, do it all over again, watch the next movie, talk about
Right.
the lore. You were so interested whenever I would tell you about different things from the book. So it just always was so special when you have like a parent who actually cares about what you care about
Oh, that's
and you
that's
were
true.
interested in it and like genuinely liked the Twilight Saga too.
Right.
So
You don't ever want to squash that. in a child, ever.
Yeah, like you were really nurturing and really cared, and that's the thing that I like about like both of my parents. Like they've never been haters. Like they always just continue to encourage me in like whatever path and interest that I have, and you do that for like both me and my sister.
But you guys have such diverse interests though, and you guys pulling me in every way, and I'm like, either way, whatever way you go, I'm going with you. So
Right.
support
Like
you,
you're rocking with us because we're rocking with you. And I love that
right?
so much.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's just mainly the reason why I've had like my dad on for this, part of the film, just because like we just have like ties in it together. Like we were the just try hard fans together during the peak time when I got into it. And it was just nice because I didn't have anyone else to talk to about it other than you. So it was like, well, I learned this new piece of information. Can't wait to call my dad. Or when I go see my dad this weekend, I'm going to talk his ear off about
Right.
all this other stuff I learned.
And I fancy myself something of an armchair critic,
Yes.
and there was a lot of cinematic uh, elements that I appreciated about the saga, a lot of the saga, the movies.
Yeah, that's also another good point. Like you are basically giving movie critic down and you love watching movies like you so that already just made it even easier for us to get into it because you already enjoy watching films. And I get that from you. There's times where like Juwan will get annoyed and we're watching something and I'm like, wait, let's talk about that. Like
Right.
I'm analyzing stuff that people wouldn't even pay attention to, and then that's
Right.
thanks to you.
Those are like nuances in dialogue, or nuances in the cinematic efforts that I find appealing and I find interesting, and I want to dissect, and I want to okay, well, why this, why that, or how this and how that.
Yeah, like you always have taught me to like ask yourself the right questions, you get the right,
You get the right answer.
answers and just like
Critically
be
thinking, yeah,
curious.
yeah,
Yeah.
critically, yeah.
Right. So we've always been, critical thinkers of movies and stuff like that. So I love it. So why don't we just get straight into it where we talk about Breaking Dawn Part 2? I've got my
Breaking Dawn Part
Wikipedia
Two.
moment. Yes. So according to Wikipedia, Breaking Dawn Part 2 says, in case you guys don't know, if you clicked on this video or this podcast episode, it says that Bella awakes as a vampire from her life-threatening labor, and her newborn daughter, Renesmee, proves to be very special indeed. While Bella adjusts to her new state of being, Renesmee experiences accelerated growth. When the Volturi learn of the baby's existence, they declare her to be an abomination and sentence the Cullens to death. Bella, Edward, and the rest of the clan seek help from allies around the world to protect their family.
Wow, wow. So an abomination. They are, I think their fear was, and they stated this, and then in the movie, was they thought that Renesmee was going to be a what they call an immortal child, and immortal children, they don't have any reservations. They just
Right.
unalive people, with reckless abandon, and they don't have any semblance of consequences to their actions. So that's why if an immortal child is created, then the person that created the immortal child, what they're calling an immortal child, is going to have to be unalived as well. So
Mm-hmm. And as Arrow says, only the known
only the
is
new.
safe.
That was the funny,
Only
but
the known
only
is
the known is
safe.
safe. Yeah, Arrow, that was a bit much, bro. Come on. And
Arrow
so,
is such a character, y'all.
I mean, we remember that they revealed it that Arrow and Carlisle used to roll together. They was part of the same coven. That
Yeah.
and So I kind of think that Carlisle isn't at the time wasn't too far removed from the antics of the Volturi, the shenanigans of the Volturi that they used to, you know, the things that they used to do as what they were vampiring, they were doing what vampires do, I guess, and I don't think that Carlisle was too far removed from that, but I think he had a limit. I think he got to a limit, and he got fed up, and
Yeah,
he, you
that's why
know,
after 2 decades, he was like, I'm gonna just dip. Love y'all though.
oh, y'all my homies for real, but I'm gonna cut out. I'm gonna cut out. Let y'all do y'all thing, and I'm gonna do my thing.
Because even when we see like the flashback that they do give us in the film, Carlisle's kind of just like off to the side, and then the Volturi are like in the front and center, and that's a moment. So it kind of makes me just think that he was just like always kind of peeping and creeping and being
Right,
like, "What are y'all doing? I'm gonna just sit back and try to get an understanding of this." And he used that to his advantage. And I think
right,
that influenced the way that he moves with his coven.
right. Because I think he started his coven that because he got a distaste for the things that the Volturi were up to, you know.
Yeah. And he says, I think that I kind of get what you guys are doing, but I think it can be done better. And let me show you how. And I think that's why the Cullens are such a threat to the Volturi, because it's kind of just like, I know everything that you guys are about, and I know how you guys operate. So Arrow seeing that Carlisle like went and kind of made his own like stacked coven himself,
Right,
I feel like it would be pretty intimidating, because it's like, okay, you left and then you got all these like A1s on your team.
right.
What's the
And
dealio?
that Carlisle created, you know, um, because I think that Carlisle was, even though he was undead and he was a vampire, I think he was still appealed to his humanistic side, which is why he chose the profession of a healer, of a doctor, and he was so in tune with his humanistic side, you know, and he still had to exist as a vampire, but he was so in tune with his humanistic side, and that's when I think him and Arrow came to heads about, you know, the way that things are done and the Volturi, and that's why he peace. See y'all later.
Yes. So I think that with my first note for the film, I don't have many notes for this film just because I feel like it's a lot going on with this. But one
It's a
thing
lot going on, and when you and I experienced it, we experienced it on an organic level, you know, for what it was, you know.
we did. And I think that that's really what it is, because especially with like the fact that you meet all the new vampires and stuff eventually, it's just like it's too much to like really try to keep track of when it comes to this movie specifically. But to start it off, I have my first note that says, "You nickname my daughter after the Loch Ness monster."
Which is which is the worst, in my opinion. Now, this is just my opinion, which is the worst and the funniest at the same time delivered line in cinematic history. Because
You've always had a problem with her delivery there.
it was just so, I don't know. It was just the funniest thing I had ever seen. And she was trying to be, show anger and ferocity and in that because, what had happened was Jacob, had imprinted on Renesmee when she was an infant. Now, Stephanie Myers, I think when she came up with that concept, she kind of knew to tread lightly
Right.
because of the optics of him imprinting on an infant. But in the vampire werewolf lore, imprinting is something that a werewolf they can't help it.
Mm-mm.
You know, it's beyond their control. So she runs. So my girl Rosalie she was the antagonist of the whole situation because when Bella came back from her first feed because she had to get her she was born when she woke up. She had to get her thirst, and Edward was like, I don't think this. They didn't say this in the movie, but I don't think you should be around your daughter, and you haven't ever fed as a vampire.
Right. Which was a
So,
good look.
which is a good look. So, he said, well, you got to get your thirst under control first. And so they went out, and also when she was on the side of a cliff, and she was trying to find a way down, and that was, and from my perspective, that was kind of shaky acting as well. But it was to be expected of Kristen Stewart. I'm quite sure she did the best she could with the role.
Yeah, I think that one thing about it is that like Kristen Stewart really had to like step into something different for this role because Bella is basically a completely new person. She has
Right.
quite literally died. So I think
Hmm.
that she really had to like give a different type of delivery and transform into this new version of Bella.
Right.
So I can't imagine like how awkward that must feel when you're so used to like playing this certain way and then the
Right.
time comes and you have to switch it up. But you're right, like the cliff climbing moment when Edward's just like Bella and then she's like and just like dives into the water is like, oh, like the way that the delivery of it is set up is just like kind of cringe.
Right.
Even with like them running through the forest and stuff, you're just like the CGI could have done better, and we all know that like the CGI was wonky, of course, with Renesmee herself, which is like the viral thing that everyone talks about. And it's like we have to address that. Like,
Yeah.
what the frick was going on with that? I feel like we could have done better. I've seen cooler things done and more seamless animation going on in Marvel movies. But
Right.
so I don't really know what happened and who dropped the ball with that. I just feel like no
Right.
matter what, like I don't really know if you guys can fully have a valid excuse. Like something could have been done to make this a little bit better. And I
Well,
understand you're tasked with an impossible moment where you have a rapidly growing baby, but we still could have done a little bit better.
a little. I've seen, to be honest with you, when it came down to Renesmee and her first appearance on screen, I've seen better animation and better CGI in deodorant commercials. To be honest with you,
Man, seriously. I'm like,
but
what is the tea?
I set that aside and I appreciated other aspects of the film because when Bella wakes up, she can actually all of her senses are so heightened, she can actually see dust particles in the air and she can hear traffic from the freeway, which is miles and miles away. And she can, she didn't have a heartbeat anymore. But in the movie, they showed her heart hardening, so to speak. So this
Yeah.
encasing around her heart and stuff like that. And
And that was
she,
I like that detail.
hmm
I also
yeah,
like my favorite part of the movie is when Bella wakes up and sees Edward. Like the amount of times that I've like rewatched that film, just in that part of the movie, mainly because I have Breaking Dawn Part Two, like the movie on my phone. So whenever
right.
I like would be like waiting for a concert or something and I'm bored and I just want to watch a movie, I would go to that. And it's like, I just eat that scene up every single time because I just feel like it's already kind of showing that like Bella is kind of a different vampire and a different type of newborn because she's able to wake up and instead of just being so like and just kind of like all over the place and
Right.
chaotic the way you would expect a normal newborn to behave, she does the exact opposite. She's calm, she's cool, she's collected, she's composed.
And
And
that's all
her and
attributed to
Edward's
Edward, I
first
believe. I
hmm,
believe that's all. I believe that's all attributed to Edward because yeah, she is a new her. She's got in this Breaking Down Part Two, she wakes up and she's got better lace fronts.
oh T, the wig
That
was wigging.
the
The
wig
wig in
is
Breaking
gonna.
Dawn Part 2 is wigging.
She's got a better lace front than Breaking Down Part One, and I'm like, okay, do it like that. And I love that, and but I love the fact that they delayed it after she fed to tell her that Jacob had imprinted on her kid. So
Yeah, they knew that they needed to wait. They needed to wait, but I love the fact that they like embrace each other. Like they're able to like feel each other. Like Bella's got her. Like I'm pretty sure like it's also different for Edward. Like touching her and their temperature is the same. We're the same temperature. Then the way she's like grabs Edward, and he's like, Bella, you're a lot stronger than I am right now.
Right.
Everything about that first encounter is so sweet.
Right, and very, very revealing as well.
Hmm.
About how I think she acclimated really, really well. As I said, she's got a better wigs on and she looks great. But he realized immediately, as soon as she was born, as soon as she woke up, you need to get your thirst under control.
Yeah, yeah. So everything about the intro is interesting. The Loch Ness monster of it all is interesting. The way that she's tossing Jacob around. I think he had it coming. Somebody needed to toughen him up a little bit, rough him around a bit because it is, a little bit problematic and she needed to address that. And then once
Right.
they got the elephant out of the room, she meets her daughter for the first time. That's a beautiful moment. The family is surrounded. Of course, Jasper is happy now because he's like, thank God I don't have to worry about wanting to kill this girl. So everyone is happy. Also, I think that the moment that is pivotal for me when they move forward in the story is the fact that they are like, well, I'm going to miss this place. Emmett is like, so long, Forks, love you down. And then Jacob learns that, like, oh, like you guys are going to try to leave, which is a problem for him because he wants Renesmee to stay around because he imprinted. So he
Hmm.
does the thing that he thinks is right. He pulls up to Charlie and he's like, I'm going to reveal myself. So that way Charlie can know that something's going down so that he has some type of knowledge that like there is a mystical being association with the gang at some point and reveals himself as a werewolf to Charlie. Um I also don't understand why he did that at the same time. Just for the simple fact that on my note, I put that in New Moon, Jacob was saying that the secret that he had wasn't his to share. He told Bella that. Remember, she
Right.
was wondering what was going on, what's happening with you, when he was transforming into a wolf. And he said, this secret is not for me to share. I can't share
Right.
it. But then he turned around and Breaking Dawn Part 2 and then immediately showed himself in wolf form to Charlie in an effort to get Bella to stay. That's one thing that
Well,
I immediately noticed when I watched the film again, even though I know it was out of desperation. But it's like, dude, I thought you said you couldn't share the secrets. But when it comes to
right.
your imprinted girly going away, then you want to spill the tea?
Well, right, right. And I think that he did that. He did what he did, although he might have been kind of misguided, but very well intended. I
Yeah,
think he asked, he he revealed himself to Charlie to stop him from asking questions. Don't ask any more questions because turns out the more Charlie knew, the more his life was going to be at risk from the
right.
Volturi because the Volturi they thrive on their existence being a secret to humans and to the rest of the world. But as I said, he was well intended but somewhat misguided with his revelation because you're revealing something about yourself to Charlie, who is a human, in an effort to stop him from getting to the bottom of what's going on with his own daughter. And I think that's the part where I think he was kind of misguided about I because naturally as a father you'd want to know more. Okay, you're coming out as dog and a very large dog, as Charlie says, uh,
He was
and
so stressed. That's why I kind of felt bad. Because when you think
right.
about it, like he was so stressed. He's like a kid I know my whole life turned into a very large dog. Ah,
I would imagine. I would imagine that's a bit disconcerting, but disconcerting. But as I said, Jacob's reasons for doing that were, they were well intended, but as I said, somewhat misguided. He could have, did something else. I mean, he was
yeah.
telling him about himself, and I don't know how. I guess Charlie was supposed to put it together, put two and two together that your daughter has changed as well,
Right,
which is
right.
why he asked her, "You don't change into a very large dog to change into a very large dog." And
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think that it was really sweet, like the preparation that went into getting ready to see Charlie again for the first time as a vampire. Like, I always love the little details in that scene where the family is like training Bella. They're like, okay, here are the contacts. Put your back up straight, but also remember to slouch a little bit. Remember to breathe. Remember to blink. And it's like, Bella's like, girl, I got it. Okay. Leave me the frick alone.
remember to look like you're breathing. I love that.
Oh my God. I love that moment so much. And I also like
Right,
the fact that at this point going forward, like Rosalie's in there. You know what I mean? So like Rosalie's helping out too. Like I just love that. And the first meeting with Charlie goes exceptionally well. Bella's able to keep it together. He meets his granddaughter for the first time. And I just really, really love that moment. Like
right.
everything about it is just so sweet.
Yeah, and I think he, as a dad, he instinctually knew, adopted. Okay, okay. I
Right.
mean, I don't know how Stephanie Myers thought that he would put it together that his daughter has changed somehow too, but I didn't see the plot concept on that one. I couldn't relate to that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. But, at the end of the day, like Bella was always able to put two and two together somehow miraculously through her dreams. And Charlie was just like the same. They're both kind of just quick witted people. Doesn't take them long to kind of go along with the program. And it's like, well, it is what it is.
Right?
And I think that's a moment.
Yeah,
Also,
it is.
like, yes, and fast forwarding to like the rest of the movie where we kind of see like Bella being a mother. It's so fun to see the way that she interacts with her
Yeah.
child. She's hanging out with Jacob, and they have the moment where Renesmee is playing in the snow, and then you got the op. The op, what's her name?
CJ
Irina.
Arena. Now, Arena, first of all, for my opinion, Arena, that's the name of a sister. That's a sister's name. Arena. That's how I look at it.
Stephanie. Irina should have been black.
Right, right, right. Arena was
Irina is just like, I just hate that about that so much. Like, girl, you were so twisted up down boots about Laurent that you didn't even give us a chance to even explain that the child was born, not bitten, and you run to the Volturi. That is so petty.
right. Now, Arena is from the
Denali,
northern, huh?
the Denali clan or
She's from the
whatever.
Denali clan up in northern Canada. And I don't understand what she was doing in Seattle to be able to see what brought her. I don't know. Maybe she wanted to talk to them about how she was feeling about them, the werewolves,
I think she
killing.
wanted to apologize post wedding, remember? Yeah, I think she was like coming to apologize because she showed out at the wedding
Right.
because she had to be escorted away.
Oh, well, okay. Now that makes sense. I'm like, why is she in that territory and whatever? Okay, it makes sense now.
Yeah, yeah. I think she was like, well, sorry I was wilding out at the wedding, y'all. And that was her intention. But then she saw that freaking child and then yeeted off to Italy to go tell, like, girl. So then that's when it gets stressful after this.
That's when the color starts to happen. You
Yeah.
know,
And they
and
realize that we need to do something about this. The Volturi think that we bit a child and turned them into a vampire when in reality, this baby was born while Bella was still human. Y'all got it twisted. We didn't commit any illegal activities. This happened naturally because babies are not allowed to be bitten to turn to vampires, as you explained at the beginning of the episode. But
right.
if they're born naturally, that's a different story. So they're
Hmm.
like, look, we need to come up with a gang of witnesses so that way when the Volturi pull up, we can prove that this child was born and she is not a threat to other vampires or humanity. And that's when we start meeting Carlisle's friends. What are your
Right.
thoughts about the friends? I think he has a very interesting group of people that show up for the Cullens.
Well,
The
there's
Romanians, is that what they were? Like, they're interesting.
the Irish.
Yes.
Well, the Denali clan are of Romanian descent.
Oh, right.
Then you got the Native American girls who are fantastically and phenomenally gifted in their own right.
Wait, which ones are we talking about?
The one the I forgot her name, Irina, or not something like that, where she can make you feel like you're in a forest or something like that.
Oh, I thought they were like African or something.
They might have been they might
Amazonian.
Amazonian. That's right. They were
Mm-hmm.
from the Amazon.
That
They
was
were
such a cool moment. I really enjoyed like getting to see all of the different characters. You got Benjamin, who's like basically a element bender. It's
right.
giving
Benjamin,
Avatar.
right, and Amon, who is his, for all intents and purposes, his father.
Yeah. I love
Yeah,
that moment when Carlisle pulls up and he's like, "Hey y'all, you want to come hang with us and like, help us with this situation?" And then Benjamin's like, "Hey, I'm curious. I'm here." And Armand's pissed. He's like, "You should have stayed in your room."
y'all had water bending like you're an avatar.
He showed up and showed out. He said, "I'm here. And
Ain't
what
nothing wrong
about
with that.
it?"
Right, right,
Oh
right.
my God, I love that moment. I'm going to have to insert a clip of him bending the water. And then it's just so cute because then when Benjamin comes back to Forks and he meets Renesmee, then he has a moment where he's like, and he
Earthbend,
bends
right.
the,
Some
he
dust
could
from the
bend
ground.
air. He can
Right,
manipulate air too.
right.
So that was like a sweet little moment because like that's so like stimulating for Renesmee's growth because she's meeting all different types of people from all different types walks of life who can do
Walks
different
of,
things
right.
and
Who have so many different gifts.
yeah. So I love that too. I even like the one guy that is kind of like a lone wolf where he shows up and he's like, "We're all gonna die," and then he like yeets off up into the attic. You remember that guy?
Sebastian. Sebastian.
Yeah. Carlos, come on, come hang. He's like, "No." Sorry, I realized when I was editing, I think his name is Alistar. I think that's how you pronounce it. Alistar. He's one of Carlisle's old friends.
I'm not gonna fight the Cullens. I'm not gonna fight the Volturi. And I'm like, what'd you come on? What'd you come for?
Like that's the question that I asked myself. I also think it's interesting because at the same time that the all of these vampires are showing up, it's causing the Quileute, I always say it wrong. The Quileute,
Quillian.
the tribe, more children are turning into wolves because the vampires are showing up. So
Right.
that was like really interesting because then we get to see like Jacob really become even more of a pack leader here in this movie because the kids are left and right turning into wolves. So
Yeah.
that's really interesting.
In Breaking Dawn Part One, he kind of stated his dominance with Sam. Um, I'm not following you. I don't have to follow you. I'm the grandson of a chief. So now, and as you said in Breaking Down Part Two, he's coming into his own as a leader, as a pack leader. You
Yeah.
know,
And like they have that one scene where like that one poor boy is just like taking a stroll in the woods and suddenly turns and Jacob's like, "Hey, hey, like it's okay." I
you
love that
okay?
moment.
Yeah,
I love that
yeah.
moment. That's so sweet. Like that
That was a
Jacob is
great
there
teaching
for the
moment
little
for Jacob.
wolves. Yeah. And then
Yeah,
like right after that, that's when the Russian people or whatever they were the show up. Vladimir, is that what his name? And then
yeah,
all
yeah,
the little wolves start like running and they're probably confused
yeah. Well,
too.
they felt a way. They felt a way about the Volturi because the Volturi gave them the business back in the day, 1,500 years ago, and they want to
You
get
want to
their
talk about the
lick back.
longest beef in history?
Yeah, but they want to get their lick back. So, and I get
They are
that.
the only people here out of this entire group of vampires that are like, no, we actually want the smoke with the Volturi.
Well, right, and first of all, when Aro first arrived on from Italy, and the rest of the Volturi, his mind was set.
Yeah.
He was going to bring some smoke to somebody, and his right hand man, what's his name, Caius,
Yeah.
his right hand man, and what's the guy, the other guy that's always
Marcus.
Marcus. Well, he wanted to bring some smoke too, because he couldn't be. For some reason, he couldn't be reasoned with, and that was the mindset of Auro when he first arrived. He didn't want reason, but Alice had to show him, look, you sure you want to do this? This is what's going to happen.
Right. I also think that it's interesting, speaking of Alice, that Alice takes off the second that they start collecting these witnesses. And now Bella is very concerned and sad because she's like, where the frick did Alice go? Because at this point, Alice is really, a supportive best friend sister for Bella. So I know she's like panicking because she's like, that's my girl. Like, where is
Right,
she gone? But we do later learn that Alice is gone because while they're collecting witnesses, she's going to get a witness of her own and she's able to bring proof to show that, hey, this is a boy who was born the same way that Renesmee was born. He's 150 years old. That's the way he says it. Me and my dad always make fun of the way he says 150.
yeah.
150 years
Remember,
old.
I'm 150. I can survive on either, and I'm like,
And
okay,
he can
then
survive on food or he can survive on
on
blood.
blood, right,
And Alice is the one that brings them proof to show the Volturi, look, here's a kid who was born the same way that Renesmee was born, and he's not violent. He's not a threat to vampires or humanity, and he can just chill. He's also got a heartbeat,
right.
and he's the same as
Just
her. So
as
that
Renesmee
means,
does, yes.
yeah, and that was like hope for everyone that Renesmee was going to live a long and happy life. So that was really cool of Alice to make sure that like only Bella knew, so that way no one could mess up this plan as she went to go get proof. So I love that.
Right. I did too. And Alice went all the way to South America to find that guy. And
Yeah.
that put things in a different perspective when the Volturi came all the way from Italy. Well, they came all the way from Italy on foot. Yeah, nobody could fly, but but then again, Alice and Jasper went to South America to find a guy
Yeah.
from I think it was called the Mapuche tribe or whatever in South America.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. And also like before we knew that Alice was gone to go collect evidence just in case things didn't go right, I like the fact that she also had a backup plan too
Right.
and made sure that in case this doesn't go right and the proof that I bring isn't good enough, we need to make sure that my niece is safe. So she said, I love that part that Alice was doing two things at once. Not
Two
only
things
was
at
she
once.
going to go collect evidence, but just in case Arrow didn't want to play nice, she made sure that Renesmee was able to get away safely and set up a meeting with for Bella to go get Renesmee a passport and money just in case they needed to run away
That
so
was
that she
forward
would be
thinking.
safe.
That was very very forward thinking on her part.
Yeah, I love that. And then we get to see like their first Christmas. At that point, Renesmee already looks like she's 10 years old. They get
Yeah.
Charlie tickets so he can go fishing so that way they can get him away from the scene because they know that a bunch of people from Italy are showing up and they don't want to talk and they don't want to play nice.
No, they
So we
didn't. They
got to
didn't.
make sure that we have a getaway plan and that Charlie is safe.
Right.
I also
And
like the
no,
fact that he's dating the Clearwater lady.
Susan. What was the name?
I think it is Susan.
Sue. Yeah. 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 So that was amazing too. But she kind of knew what when Bella was pregnant the whole time during her pregnancy. Sue told Charlie she's going to be fine.
Yeah,
She yeah she knew about the quillets, sorry, and she knew about them and what their life was all about. So she wasn't one of them, but
yeah,
she
but
knew about
she's
them.
associated with the gang.
She was associated with the squad. Yeah,
That's a good point to bring up. Yeah, like everybody knew what was going on, and I'm glad that Charlie had somebody to support him during that moment. No longer was he alone because this is a lot for him to even take in, and the
oh,
fact
it
that he's a
is. Yeah,
grandpa now. So
yeah,
it felt really comforting knowing that Charlie now had somebody to be there for him while he dealt
right,
with this transition of life of his daughter being different, taking in Jacob and then now having a granddaughter, it's like nice that he's got a
Right.
lady by his side.
Right.
Also, your favorite part that comes up with as they're getting ready for the battle for the Volturi to come, and they've got their witnesses, they've got their backup plan just in case things go left, and they're getting ready for the Volturi to show up. Carlisle and Edward have this like really sweet moment where he says that he feels bad that everyone is here because he fell in love with the human, but Carlisle's like, dude, don't worry about it. We
Right.
love you. We're here for you. I know you love that moment, don't you?
Right. I do. I do. I love that moment because it's like in the beginning of our when we started this, you were giving me my flowers as a parent or whatever, and I love that. I appreciate that. And Edward essentially did the same thing with Carlisle, and he turns to Carlisle and he's overlooking the scene or whatever, and how many um, witnesses that's assembled on his behalf, you know. Um, so he turns to Carlisle and he says, Carlisle, thank you for this incredible life. Because I'm quite sure he rebelled. He even said he rebelled when he first was turned. He didn't want it, but he tells Carlisle, "Thank you for this incredible life." Because had he not come back into the fold, he never would have met Bella. They never would have ended up
Yeah.
in Washington. He never would have met his the love of life, for lack of a better word. No, he's not. We know he's not alive, but the love of his life. So
I think it's interesting also that Edward, not a lot of people know that Edward, like you said, he did rebel. And there's a few years where he didn't even live with Esme and Carlisle.
right,
Yeah, he went off on his own for a couple of years and
right.
then eventually came back. So I do think that that's a moment because, Carlisle would always worry that Edward was just going to be sad and alone for the rest of his life and always was just like, did I make the wrong choice? Like, does he resent me for what I've done? And this was the full circle moment, like you said, for Edward to be like, this was what all my pain and suffering was for, this very moment.
This
And
very moment,
actually, I
yeah.
appreciate you for giving me this because, like you said, it led to this moment now where I have my lady, I've got my child, and we're Gucci. So that was a really cute moment. And then Jacob's like, yeah, we're by the fire. Let's tell some battle stories. And I thought that was a sweet little moment, too.
Yeah, and I'm really glad the young lady from the from the northern clan. She and what's the guy's name from New Orleans?
Oh, I forget. I have to put it. I'll put it on the thing.
I'm glad. I'm glad they found each other. So
Yeah, they were really
now,
sweet.
yeah, they were really sweet. So now we're at the point where um Aro and his clan and all of the Volturi seem like he brought all of them.
Yeah, the
Um,
whole guard.
the whole guard. But if you look at the movie, the number of the guards changes, it fluctuates. But I will get into that. That was just uh, and something that I noticed in my quirkiness. And wait a minute, I thought there was like 50 of them. Now it's like 25 or whatever. And so we're at the point where, as I mentioned, I think Aro came there with the full intent to
In them.
um, to end them. Because he fell for what Arena had said, and everyone had fell for what Arena had said, and he didn't want to he didn't want to be reasoned with. So we're at the point now where Alice pops up,
Yes.
and I think his whole end game. I think our it was revealed in our Arrow's whole end game was to secure Alice to his coven because he was so enamored with her gift. He wasn't enamored with her. He was so enamored with her gift. And it seemed like to me he wanted to dismiss Jasper the whole time. And his whole focus was that was his goal
Yeah.
to secure Alice. She shows up and she shows him what was about to pop off if you want to pursue this any further. Talk about that.
Like Alice ate with that.
She
She's
did.
like, listen, you can try us if you want to, if you want to.
if you want to.
But I'm gonna show you what will happen if you try it. And it's
Right.
not gonna end pretty, babes.
No. Right. So we get to no, it's not. We get to the point where
They show us
they show up.
what could happen.
They show what could happen, but she turns to what is her name? Bella. She turns to Bella and she says, "Now." I thought she was talking to Edward, but she was actually talking to Jacob. She was telling Jacob to run now. Get Renesmee out of here now.
Right. I thought that that was interesting too. The fact that Alice put Jacob into the plan because she knew that Jacob would be able to get Renesmee to safety is so interesting. And it's like, even though the scene theoretically is fake, right? It didn't actually happen.
Right.
It is to a certain extent reality because Alice is showing him this is a possible version of the future. This could actually really happen. So that if you're
Right.
looking at it from that perspective, when Jacob runs away with Renesmee on his back and then fights a vampire at the same time,
Man, the guy that they sent after Jacob, he didn't stand a chance, really. He might have been fast, whatever, but he really didn't stand a chance against Jacob
mm-mm.
because
I
Jacob
love that
had
part.
right. So in the vision, even though Aro is still terrified of the vision, here's how I know that he felt some type of way against Carlisle. Still held some type of resentment against Carlisle because um, when Carlisle they first of all they kill um, Arena to kind of goad the Cullens into fighting
Right. It was giving like, we're going to throw this out as bait.
as
And
bait.
thank goodness they were just like, blinder. You know what I mean? Like they
Right, right,
knew,
right,
like, oh, we knew you guys were going to be in your petty bag. So, like, let's stay calm and collected. Let's not react here. That was
right.
smart thinking on their part.
Very smart, very
But the
smart.
fact that Jacob was able to fight a vampire while having Renesmee on his back, and then of course what started it all was the fact that him, Arrow, and Carlisle get into it, and that's the moment we were talking about at the beginning of the episode that made me sob. I'm
Right.
literally like reaching onto my dad in the movie theater because when Carlisle
Right.
got that head popped off,
When he got
sweetie,
his head ripped off, guys,
I was
you
distraught.
were destroyed. You actually literally cried during that part because, as I mentioned earlier on, you got this death grip when as soon as Arrow came down and gave that grin that he ripped off Carlisle's head, you grabbed my leg and almost ripped the skin off of that leg. I'm like, okay, 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 let go, let go, let go. That
No,
was
like,
too. That was wrong. That was wrong.
oh my
I still remember
God,
that.
no, because I was down bad. I
Yeah,
was scared. It
and
just
that
got
told
so
me
real.
right, and that told me that Arrow still felt some type of way about Carlisle bouncing from his squad because it. We've seen Carlisle fight werewolves, huge werewolves, but Arrow just took him out so effortlessly. Seemed like to me.
Yeah. You gonna behead a dude that quick and that swiftly? A
You still,
menace.
yeah, yeah. You hated that dude. So when Arrow when the fight ensues. Keep in mind, Alice is still holding Arrow's hand. And he's still showing him this vision. But Arrow decides to throw Knuckles anyway, and he gets what he deserves. And
Yeah.
the whole Volturi get what they deserve. So
Right. And that's just insanity. You see Bella and Edward working together to in the fight. That's always such a sweet moment when Edward throws Bella and they're able to like do that. I mean, and then it's like it's just crazy to think that like if this battle would have happened, Jasper would have died.
Jasper would have
Uh,
died. Alice, Renee, Carlisle's companion would have died. Irene, what was his name? Renee.
Esme Esme
Esme.
survived though. It was that moment where Esme almost died, but then I think Leah ended up falling into that pit that the dude opened up.
Right.
I think that was that.
I thought she fell in with her. No,
Mm-mm.
Leah died. Leah died in that.
Yeah, and then Edward almost fell in there. That was
But
a
Edward
moment.
wasn't having it. He came through it. Edward
He
wasn't having it.
Superman yeeted out of that.
You know, but Edward did something that I think is his signature move because he did it with Victoria and he did it with. I thought he did it with James, but you corrected me. James the Tracker. Remember James?
Yeah,
Oh,
from the first Twilight movie.
okay. Edward has this move where he goes. He's got you, and he goes over the shoulder and he rips your head off. I love that move. That's a signature. Hey man, that's a WWE move.
It is. It feels very much like he's gonna do a stunner, and that it eats. Like, oh my god,
Essentially,
everything
that's what it
about
is. It's a stunner.
yeah, everything about this fight, this imaginary fight, is such a crazy like look into what could have been the reality, and the fact that everyone did their part, everyone ate the wolves, and like knowing that the fact that like Caius is scared of wolves, it's like,
Right.
okay, clock that T, we got the wolves on our side, is crazy. Like, there's just so much more that we could talk about with the fight scene, but it's just so hectic, so try to dissect it even more, I feel like would just make my brain hurt.
Didn't in the fight scene? Didn't Seth die as well as Leah?
Yeah, and that's what ended up like causing Jacob to kind of slow down a little bit in the middle of like him running away with Renesmee on his back because he realizes that they passed.
Right.
And then Renesmee's like, Jacob, Jacob. And then he's like, oh, okay, I gotta get back together, and
And he
then
focused.
finishes him off.
Right.
But
So
I love that. I think it's such a good twist to put in to show us like, Arrow, you're not as powerful as you thought. Like, we're nothing to play with.
no, no. You want smoke? Well, we got smoke, and we're not talking about
Right.
smoke from that guy's hands either. We're talking about smoke. We're talking about smoke. What was his name? Alice's. What was the guy's name? That had the death smoke coming out of his hands.
Oh, Jane's brother,
Yeah, Jane's
Alec.
brother. Yeah, Alec. Yeah.
Yeah, his talent is actually pretty cool. Also, I like the fact that Bella was able to use her shield. She was able to use
Yes.
her shield before they
Yes.
even started fighting.
Right.
And I think that that's so interesting that the one guy from the Denali coven clocked a T, because I think that is his ability. If I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, people, but I think the guy from the Denali coven has the ability to see other people's abilities.
That. Right. I mean, it's,
So he was like, "Oh, Bella, you might be a shield." So that
right.
was
Right. Right.
really beneficial. She was like, "Oh, okay."
Okay. Right. And I mean, for him to be able to tell people, oh, you got your shield. Oh, you're strong. Oh, you're smart. Oh, you can fly. You can. That's kind of a whack ability to have, though.
Right, but
I
I
mean,
think it
if
probably would be
it,
beneficial for the Volturi because I think he
right, he
might have
did.
rocked with the Volturi.
He ran with the Boltori as a, and I take that back because I guess it is a good ability to have because that makes you a better strategist as to what plan of action to take.
Right, because Arrow could definitely use somebody like that on his team because we know that Arrow likes to mysteriously destroy covens and then take the gifted one. So that's probably what he was useful for. Being
Right,
like, oh, that girl over there, you might want to snatch her up. She's
right,
useful. But everything about that fight sequence was just like chaotic, but at the same time, so needed and so necessary to show Arrow what his potential future could have been. And we know that in the end, Arrow decides, actually, I don't want the smoke. So I'm going to let you guys do what you got to do. We see that, like, there is really no threat to us here. Renesmee is going to grow up. She's not a threat or harm to us. And we'll bounce. Love you.
can I
Bye.
can I do the arrow? Can I do the arrow line? There is no danger here. I love that. I love that. I love that.
And Caius was so irritated. He's like, "What?" And he's like, "No, believe me, you don't. I'll talk. I'll explain later."
I was like, I'll run it down later, but you don't want this right now.
Right.
You
Like
want a
he
lot of
gives
things, and you don't.
Caius no explanation. But Caius
Right.
is like, okay, I guess. I guess we'll leave if you say so. Takes his word for it. They dip. And then everybody's just like, yay, we have a happy ever after. And then here you have the Romanian dudes like, wait, they're we can attack them now. They're on the run, they're on the run. Like, dude, we ain't worried about that. We don't want smoke. You wanted
You
smoke.
want his vote.
That
So
moment
what?
is so funny to me.
It's very, very, very funny. So we're at the point right now where all's well that ends well, and Edward and Bella are in their favorite spot in the field, and she has been working on a few things. She's been working on her
Hmm.
game. She's been working on her game, and she has a power. She seems to have developed the power, not only just the power of the shield, but something similar to Renesmee, where she can show glimpses of life.
And that's
And
one thing that I find is interesting because I did put that in my notes because I know that you and I have like pondered this for a while. When Bella shows her memories at the end, do we think that she's projecting her memories onto Edward, or is she lifting her shield so that he can read her mind?
that's
What
what
is
he's
your
doing.
take?
My take is, I think that's exactly what it is because
Lifting her
she's,
shield or is she projecting it?
I think she's lifting her shield because
Mm.
he says, Edward says, after she shows him, she says, "How did you do that?" So she lifted her shield so that he could see what she saw. He could feel what she felt. That's exactly what I think happened. Yeah, she just simply
Yeah.
lifted her shield, so she got a glimpse of Jacob and Renesmee fully grown, a fully realized adult because after she
Oh, that
returns,
was Alice. Alice had that vision.
Alice had the vision.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're
Right.
right. You're right. You're right. Alice had that vision.
Alice had a vision of seeing Renesmee fully grown and knowing that Jacob was always going to be there to protect her. But in that moment in the meadow, Bella said, now you know nobody's ever loved anyone more than I love you. And she ate with that.
She did, but he ate back. He says, "Well, with one exception."
Right.
Who's the exception you think he was talking about? Renesmee or himself?
I think he was talking about himself. They're not talking about that child. Because the gag is, I don't even want to say that they love each other more than they love Renesmee, but it's like neither of them give me like two like parent vibes. Like, you know what I mean? It's
Right.
like it's still about us, but we just also have this like kid now. I guess is what I
I
get from
guess.
them.
I we'll fit her in there somewhere. So yeah.
No, but like the truth is, like we know Bella loves the baby down, but it would have
Yeah.
been nice to like get to see Edward be more of a dad because it's almost like Edward is just like an uncle to his own child in this movie. Do you get that
Right.
vibe where it's like I don't
No,
really
I
feel
did.
like you're a dad. Like we barely even
Right.
get to
I mean,
see him.
you're like Emmett.
Right. Like dang, I wish I would have just seen like a little bit more of the family connection and like them all together. But Renesmee grows so quickly.
Right.
So I don't know, but in the end, I think it's just so beautiful, and the fact that like the way that they chose the direction of ending the movie was beautiful, because then you see like the pages of the book turn, and then they like zoom in on the word forever. That
Ah,
always makes me
yes.
start sobbing.
Yes. That was a very dope moment. I love that. I really enjoyed that one too.
Yeah. Well, do you have any other thoughts about this movie in general to wrap us up?
Um, well, you don't. Well, we find what my general thought is. Arrow doesn't want to smoke.
Yep.
He thought he did, but he don't. He don't.
He
When
don't.
you
He doesn't want the smoke.
when he saw that torch coming to his face, he did. Oh, you know what? Let me think about this.
then it was just so interesting because they were like, "Yeah, like we'll run into the Volturi again, I'm sure one day, but we're not tripping."
Oh, and my girl, Rosalie, she handled herself on the battlefield.
Yes,
She handled herself.
she did. Rosalie, like, I just love Rosalie's growth and the fact that, like, at the end, once the Volturi runs away, Rosalie and Emmett, like, they look at each other lovingly, and you're just like, oh, like, I really love them so much together.
Yeah. Overall, it was a fantastic ending to a great saga, I think.
I agree. That's like one thing that we should, note here too. Sometimes you're not always satisfied with the ending or, of a series, but I think that they did great with this.
Oh,
Stephanie
I
did
have
a
to
good
agree.
job, a decent job of writing it, and the book and the movie I think was a good choice for them to decide to split it up between part 1 and part 2. And part 2, like, it was really good. I really really liked it. I really enjoyed it. And it's like it's a movie that I enjoy watching like the most,
Right.
I'd say.
I don't know if Stephanie Myers wrote the screenplay, but it was a very, very, very. It wrapped everything up very well.
It
Wrapped
did.
up the whole saga very, very well, and I enjoyed it. That's why I watch it repeatedly. I was just watching it the other day.
Yeah, I really do enjoy it. And I think the only thing that I wish that we could have gotten more of is like more time with like all of the vampire friends. That would have been nice. But I'm really hoping that if we do get this new Twilight TV show that they said that they're gonna give us, that
And that
they
TV show
take.
is going to be centered around.
I don't know. And that's what
Okay.
I'm curious about. Are we going to just recover everything we've already done? Or are they going to take this opportunity to flesh out other parts of the story that deserve to have a spotlight where we get to learn more about the other vampire friends? We get to learn more about showing the Cullens backstories and Carlisle and even Esme. That'd be interesting if they knew what they were doing, they would do that.
Do you know if Stephanie Myers has anything to do with this development?
I'm not sure. I haven't looked into it at all like I should.
Right now, it's just conjecture and hearsay about them doing it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm sure that if the time comes and they do actually do it, you will make sure that we check it out and
Well,
talk
definitely,
about it. So I'm looking
definitely.
forward to that too.
We have to, definitely.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Dad, for joining me. I had so much fun talking to you. I feel like we weren't able to like even go in all in on like all the little details that me and you have gone in on like previously, but
We've
because it's a
right,
podcast,
but we've gone in on them, together and in our own way, and I love that. I love that so much.
yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I really appreciate you guys being here. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Rate that 5 stars and give me a review on Spotify
Yes,
and Apple to support your girl. And
yes.
this wraps up my Twilight mini series.
I'm glad I was
Ah,
able to. I'm glad I was able to be part of it. I really am. I really am. I was so glad.
yes. Well, thank you so much, Dad. Thank you guys for joining. And with
Take my
that,
body
I will
and
see
glue
you
it all
guys next
platforms, niggas, all the
week.
boys want a picture.
Bye.
Two
Bye.
foreign cars, I make rich look richer. Save your breath, baby, I'm not going home with ya. Mini skirt on, take my body in glitter. Platform sneakers, all the